Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make Nanaimo bars, and this is what they look like. This is a no-bake bar, 3 layers. On the bottom, it's like a graham cracker crumb crust, yet we're going to add some dried coconut to that and some chopped nuts and cocoa powder. And then on top of that, we're putting a vanilla flavored buttercream, and we're going to finish them off with a layer of dark chocolate. So the first thing you will need to do is get your pan ready. You will need a 9-inch square pan. That's 23 centimeters. Now you could just butter your pan or spray it with one of those nonstick sprays, but I find it easier to get the squares out of the pan to line it with foil. And you want to put it up the sides so then when we're done, we can just lift them right out. Makes it nice and easy. So we're going to start with our bottom layer. You will need a large bowl. Now you will need 2 cups, which is 200 grams of graham cracker crumbs. Now you can just buy graham cracker crumbs, but my preference is to actually start with the whole graham cracker and then make my own crumbs. I don't know, they just seem to taste better. So for 2 cups, you'll need about 13 graham crackers. Now you could just put these in your food processor and process them until they're nice and fine. But normally what I do is I take a plastic bag and then I just put my graham crackers in there. I've done most of them already. And then I just take a rolling pin and make my crumbs. And put that in there. The other choice, if you can't find graham cracker crumbs, is to just use digestive biscuits and then just crush those. Tastes just as good. Some would say better. I'll leave that up to you to decide. So anyways, we're going to put our graham cracker crumbs in a large bowl, along with a half a cup, 60 grams of coarsely chopped nuts, walnuts. I think, traditionally walnuts, but pecans would be good. I think you could try almonds, hazelnuts, but I always use walnuts. And you will also need 1 cup of dried coconut. Now you can use sweetened or unsweetened. You can use shredded or flaked. I'm using the unsweetened. I think this is sweet enough, so I'll leave that up to you also to decide. And then just mix that all together. Okay, and then you will need a saucepan, medium size, and a half a cup, 113 grams of butter. Now you could use salted or unsalted here, whatever your personal preference is. So I'm just going to put this over medium heat and melt it. Okay, so once your butter has melted, take it off the heat. And then I'm going to whisk in 1/3 of a cup, 30 grams of unsweetened cocoa powder. Now you could use either, Dutch processed or the natural unsweetened, whatever you have and whatever you like. Just whisk that in, along with 1/4 of a cup, 50 grams of granulated white sugar. Just whisk that. Okay, it's all melted. And now you will need 1 large egg. Have your egg at room temperature. A large egg is about 50 grams. And then I'm just going to whisk that. And then we're going to slowly add it in to our hot mixture. Do it gradually, because we don't want to scramble our eggs. Okay, and then we're going to put this back on the heat on low, and then we're just going to cook it for, maybe a minute or 2, just until it thickens up a little. Whisk it the whole time. Okay, so we're almost there. As you can see, it's thickened up quite a bit. Okay, I'm going to take it off the heat, plug that, and then I'm going to add 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of pure vanilla extract, That's simply for flavoring, so if you want to leave that out, you could. So just add this into here, and that will be our bottom layer. This is a Canadian recipe and actually comes from Nanaimo, British Columbia, beautiful city. And you know, although there is lots of recipes, what I've found over the years, I would kind of trade recipes with my girlfriends. We were all giving each other the exact same recipe. So I would say this is a traditional recipe for Nanaimo bars. Very popular in Canada. And there's a reason why. They are really good. So I'm just going to use my hands here to get this all mixed together. Oh, really smell that cocoa. So good. Okay, so that looks good. And now I'm just going to pour that right in there. And I'm just going to use my fingers here to press this into an even layer. So we're not baking this. As I said, these are no bake. So what we're going to do is just cover and put our squares or our bars, I guess, in the refrigerator until this layer is nice and firm. I mean, depending how cold your refrigerator is, could take like an hour. So that's it. So when we come back, we will make our next layer, the vanilla buttercream. So now for our second layer, which is a vanilla buttercream. If you have a stand mixer, use your paddle attachment. You could use a hand mixer, or really you could just use a bowl with a wooden spoon for this. The first thing you will need is 1/4 cup, 55 grams of butter. Have your butter at room temperature, and I'm just going to beat it just until it's nice and smooth. Okay, so next you will need 2 cups, which is 230 grams of confectioner sugar. You may know that as powdered or icing sugar. I do like to sift. I'm using a strainer. You could, if you have an actual sifter, you can use that. I like to do that to get rid of any lumps, because it does tend to have lumps. Okay, and I'm just going to put that in there. Gently. Okay, and then kind of the secret ingredient of Nanaimo bars is we're going to use custard powder. You will need 2 tablespoons, 20 grams of dried custard powder. Now, I don't normally show brands, but for this, Bird's custard powder seems to be the one that you can find most readily, especially in Canada. I think it's most grocery stores. In the US, I'm seeing it more and more in grocery stores. It's usually in the British section or international foods, but to tell you the truth, more often than not, I just order it online. Now, you could use like a vanilla pudding powder instead, or really, if you can't find either one of those, you can just leave it out. It just adds a little flavor and color to our buttercream, but you can leave it out. And then I'm adding 1/2 teaspoon, 2 grams of pure vanilla extract, and I'm just going to beat that in slowly because I don't want that coming up in my face. So it's kind of mixed together. So now what I'm going to do is add maybe 2-3 tablespoons. I'm using like a light cream or 1/2 and 1/2. You could even use milk. Just want to bind it all together and make it, you know, thin enough that we can spread it. So I'm going to start with about 2.5 tablespoons and then go from there. Just beat that in. Just going to check that. Still a little thick. The custard powder adds, besides adding flavor to our buttercream, it gives it a nice kind of pinky yellowy color, which I love. But it's a little thick, so I'm going to add a little more cream. Okay, that's looking good. Yeah, so there we have it. Okay, I'm going to just get my squares out of the refrigerator, and then we'll spread on our buttercream. So our bottom layer is nice and chilled. So we're just gonna take our buttercream and spread it on top. Now there are lots of stories about how Nanaimo bars came into existence. The story I'll tell you that I like is that a woman entered a chocolate square recipe for a magazine contest, and she called them Nanaimo bars. And from there, the city of Nanaimo kind of claimed these squares or bars as their own, and they eventually became popular all across Canada. So that's my story. There are lots of other stories of how they came into existence. So I'm just using an offset spatula. You could just use the back of a spoon to spread this out. And then again, we're going to put these back into the refrigerator because we got to get this layer nice and cold and firm. And when we come back, we will put on our top layer, which is chocolate. So now for our chocolate layer. You will need a saucepan of simmering water, and then in a heat-proof bowl, I like to use stainless steel. I have 4 ounces, which is 115 grams. Now you can use either a semi-sweet or even a bittersweet chocolate. You want to use a really good tasting chocolate, one that you would just eat just on its own. And then if you're using a bar of chocolate, you want to coarsely chop it. I'm using these round discs, so I don't need to. And then to your chocolate, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon, which is 13 grams of butter. And that'll just smooth out our chocolate nicely. And then I'm just going to put it over our simmering water and let it melt together. Okay, so our chocolate is melted. So take it off the heat. Now it is like just a touch warm, so I'm going to let it cool down for a few minutes, and then we will spread it on top of our buttercream. Okay, so now our buttercream layer is nice and chilled and firm, so we can pour our chocolate over the top. Okay. And then I'm using my offset spatula. Again, you could just use the back of a spoon. Just spread the chocolate over our buttercream. It's just a thin layer of chocolate. And again, we are going to put this back into the refrigerator, but only for maybe 10-15 minutes. All we want at this point is for the chocolate to set. So right now it's nice and shiny. When it sets, it'll kind of dull a little bit. And then we are going to cut our Nanaimo bars into individual bars. So our chocolate has set. It only took about 10 minutes. So then just peel back your foil. And then large knife. I do like to trim my edges because they're kind of a little messy. So I'll just cut. And then kind of edge there is kind of the cook's treat, I think. So you want to wipe your knife between cuts. And then you can cut these as big or small as you want. The reason you just want the chocolate to set, if you see I made a really nice clean cut, if you let them sit like say a couple hours in the refrigerator and then try to cut it, the problem is that that chocolate is going to become so firm that when you try to cut it, it will crack. So that's why I only let it just set up, and then I cut them. So I'll just whatever size you want. I cut off the end there, so that's what I'm going to try. I've been making these a long time, probably, maybe I shouldn't say, probably 40 years. And you know what? I love them every bit today as I did when I first started to make them. They're very flavorful. You know, that bottom layer, graham crackers are really good, or crushed digestive biscuits. But then you have the addition of the coconut and then the nuts and then the cocoa powder. It really makes a flavorful base. And then, of course, you have that wonderful buttercream and then the nice layer of chocolate. A wonderful bar. It's no bake. It's not that hard to make. They last quite a few days in the refrigerator. So try these. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.